Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and next to me is the doctor himself.
Hello.
Each week, we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners like you. Today, we are joined by podcaster, director, model, kung fu instructor, Mimi Chan. As if there was anyone else who had all of those things listed.
Yeah. I think that
wow. That's quite an intro. Thank you so much.
No,
Thanks
absolutely.
for inviting me.
This is unbelievable. This makes your martial arts history like gone. You were the martial arts guy for a while.
I know. I like compared to you, I'm the martial arts guy. Now I'm like the rent-a-cop martial arts guy.
No fair. Tell me about your martial arts background. It's exciting.
I did like Kempo karate and Muay Thai. I have a second degree black belt in karate.
Okay, that's a lot of hard work.
That's cute.
That's clearly like those days are behind me. Like, but yeah, and I like sort of dabbled in other things, but like, that was when I was considerably younger and you're fitter and stuff like. Well, I know it's like it's so funny. It's like bragging about like how much you know about the moon to like Neil Armstrong.
I looked through a telescope once. That was cool.
Certainly, like never achieved any sort of like level where I would have considered myself like a master of the art, right?
Okay, well, mastery is an ongoing thing. So, but I understand and appreciate your humility. But it's always nice to meet a fellow martial art enthusiast, at the very least, if not practitioner. So,
I mean, I think
cool.
Though it's all connected because starting in martial arts, then I fell in love with martial arts movies, which I think is like just a hop, skip, and a jump to comic books, and like especially ones where the action is really like well sort of plotted or well paced, right?
Yeah. And so you're saying you were a martial arts fan before you jumped into comics. That was kind of your pathway?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
I sort of grew up on martial arts movies, like classic sort of Jackie Chan, like Project A and stuff like that. And I would say that was probably before comics. Oh my God, I'm just learning about something about myself.
Well, this is great. Go on, tell me more.
Well, let's talk about you. People that listen to this show hear enough about me, but you are an actual like master, right? Use the word.
So technically that's the translation, but like of course as I said earlier, it's just kind of like an ongoing lifelong study. So but yes, I've literally done this my entire life, continue to study, continue to train, as well as teach, and that's pretty much that's like my day job. So my real life everyday thing is definitely teaching and proliferating my father's art. So it's called Wallum Kung Fu, and so we've been doing that for quite a long time now. 40 years in Orlando this year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Yes, that's basically dating me as well.
I can't remember if I read it somewhere else or heard it on your podcast, but that expertise in Kung Fu is what led you to be involved with Mulan. Correct?
Yes, that is correct. So the long story short of it is basically we work very closely with Disney. We did the grand opening of the China Pavilion at Epcot back in the day in like the 80s, and we've done shows there. And so when they were looking for talent and doing stuff for Mulan, I happened to kind of be in that right place at the right time, and met the lead animator, Mark Henn, and he basically chose me to be the model. And then I did a lot of like all the martial arts choreo and things like that for the film. And it was a little bit of a kismet, but yes, definitely because of my martial arts background, that was very, very integral to why I think he felt that there was this great connection.
That's similar to how you got involved with those Shrek films, right?
Oh, come
on. They just found you hanging around a swamp.
Just eating raw onions.
Yeah.
I mean, what was that experience like? Like, would they just bring you in and say like, do some kung fu and then like film it and then draw it later, or like what was part of that process?
So this was like right on the cusp of motion capture. So they did not use that for this, of course. It's traditional animation. It's not CG anyway. But basically, there were two different aspects of it. So one aspect was actual still posing for the artist to just really flex their muscles and practice. So literally, I'd be in a room, often my cousin with me, who was the Captain Shang Li character, and we would literally like do kung fu poses, and they would draw, and it would be practice drawing. Yeah, so it was pretty interesting. But for the movie itself, we did live action reference. So we would actually film pieces. I did the scene where you run. I had to jump off a big box, which was the roof, and we did we did all the choreography live and did the videoing of it in different angles. And then they would reference that video, so I didn't have to like do the scene over and over as they drew or anything. But yeah, so it's video reference. So.
That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a great time. A very long time ago now, but definitely something that, kind of lives on. So it's nice to be kind of immortalized in the Disney world in that sense.
Yeah, totally. So then what for you, is there a connection, or was there a leaping off point to like a love of comics? Or being interested in superheroes or things like that. Is there any connection between those two worlds?
Not at all. So the irony is insomnia led me to comics. So my husband I used to make fun of him for being a comic book geek, and now he makes fun of me because he says I'm the bigger geek, but basically, but I've always been, and I know we'll talk about this today, a Wonder Woman fan. Right. So I grew up on Linda Carter. I had the bracelets and the boots when I was 4 or 3, I was all in with that character. So ironically, like there was that superhero connection when I was younger, and apparently when I was really young, I loved like Superman as well, but I never really read any of the comics or anything like that. So of course, once the TV show died off, I don't think I sought it out or anything.
Right.
But then so much later in life, my husband's like, oh, you have trouble sleeping, you should read. And I was like, I don't like reading, because at that time I didn't read. Now I'm reading like crazy. So yeah, as you get older, things do change, everyone. But basically, he's like, well, you love Wonder Woman. Why don't you read this? And he gave me Kingdom Come. And I thought it was beautiful, and I was completely enamored by it. I'm like, this is comics. I'm all in, And so, and then he'd introduced me to some other comics. I was like, why doesn't all of the art look the same? And why is it not colored? Like, why is it not like Alex Ross's? Yeah, I was like, why doesn't it look like the last thing I read? And then why doesn't the cover match the inside?
That's really
that's a huge
So I kind of like had my kind of change. But the irony is I did, of course, fall in love with that. I read a lot of Wonder Woman arcs, and I don't actually tend to gravitate towards just the traditional superhero stuff. Like I really got hooked on Sandman, and I like a lot of those alternate stories where it's not just like, well, you kind of know who this character is and what's kind of going, I like something completely different. I love all the BK Vaughn stuff. So, so then I just read a lot because, that's telling I did have a lot of insomnia, but it ended up catching me up. And then, I absolutely love it. And got introduced to the Comic-Con thing in the process. The first con I ever went to, I was invited as a panelist, as a guest, to talk about my Mulan experience. And then it was weird. I actually had never been to a con as just like a regular guest until I actually had done San Diego Comic-Con as a panelist as well. Wow. After that, I went to Rose City, and I didn't have to do anything. I was like, oh, this is what it's like to just walk around and not have a thing. So it's kind of a backwards. It's always a little backwards with me.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's incredible.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Wonder Woman.
I did.
Wonder Woman. I think we should just get into talking about how much we love Wonder Woman.
Yeah, that seems like the right way to do that. Wow, what a seamless transition that was.
I'm a pretty seasoned podcaster.
I could see your eyes twitching as you were walking through that. So
it's 9 a.m.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Wonder Woman. I mean, you've mentioned a little bit of it. What's been your relationship with it since sort of you were a kid, and have you sort of reignited that passion for it once you got into comics and the new movies, and sort of where are you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, as a child, she was like iconic, a heroine. You know, growing up, there weren't that many, to my recollection, female characters that kind of stood out the way that Linda Carter did for me, and just seeing her on the screen beating people up and also justly so, but with style, with the hair in place, like, you know, I have to do the girly aspect, but at the same time it was just such an empowerment thing. And kind of growing up as a martial artist, I was a bit of a tomboy and everything, and so I never understood why there were so many instances where it felt like girls were put second, like, you know, soccer teams, it was kind of the boys soccer team was more important, all of those things. And so, you know,
good thing all that's changed now.
Yeah, we've come so far.
Oh yeah,
we solved it.
Yeah, we fixed it all.
But yeah, and so it's always a bit of that. And like I said, sharing the Kingdom Come story, I love the collaborative of the entire story and everything, but I really probably just kind of jumped in and read a lot more of the Wonder Woman arcs and different stories. I didn't go way back, which I'm kind of glad, because after kind of viewing the overviews, you know, she really wasn't represented in the same way that I see her in my head. So it's probably for the best. But obviously, I love my, you know, probably biased now because we're quite good friends, Greg Rucka's run on Wonder Woman. I love the way he writes that character, and that actually is what ignited our friendship. Was I just really appreciated his writing of female characters. And when I asked him, like, oh, why do you write female characters so well? He's like, because I'm not an idiot, was his answer. I was like, oh, because you're not just writing a female character, you're writing the character, period. Yes. Right? So you're not like, okay, well, the girl would do this, right? It's just like, no, I'm writing Wonder Woman. Obviously, I love Gail Simone's portrayal of her as well. And I think there was like a really fun Brian Azzarello run that was just kind of a separate of kind of fun with the Greek mythology. So I really enjoyed reading those stories. I'm not as into like following everything in order in the timeline, especially with these type of characters, because it's so complex. And it always bothered me when I was reading and it felt seamless, and then suddenly the artist or the writer changed and the whole feel of it was gone. Like it was complete. It felt like a different book, a different character. And so I tend to gravitate to like the artists and the writers that I enjoy.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, especially with a character like Wonder Woman, who's gone through some
drastic changes,
but also sometimes the change is like, it's drastic enough that you notice it and it's kind of jarring, but not drastic enough that like there's a clear like demarcation point. Like sometimes you just read Wonder Woman, you go like, when did this happen?
Well, it's a character that's changed so much, and I think that they struggled a really long time between its inception and sort of like where they are now. There was like this huge gap where they just like couldn't figure it out, because I think that like
they were almost publishing out of spite, because I think it was like if they didn't put out 4 Wonder Woman comics a year, they would lose the rights. The rights would revert back to the family.
Oh,
and so they like for a while. It was kind of just out of spite. It was like the book no one wanted is where you got like relegated in DC, basically until like the 80s and George Perez almost, right? Like,
I think
so. What was there a point where you guys? I'm sorry, really?
No. Continue.
Had your love for the character? I mean, because you obviously are the experts here in DC, and so was there like the first issue that you picked up and you're like, oh, this is great, or
I think for me, it's been learning about the like development of the character, and more about sort of like Marston's sort of like creation of it and the history behind all of that. And sort of like I watched like a documentary thing like maybe a year ago about sort of its inception and sort of what had happened to it throughout the years, and like all the sort of like subtext, especially in like the original ones, and like I think that it's got one of the most interesting sort of creation stories of all of like DC characters, I think.
Right.
I think that's the thing that really sort of made me fall in love with it. It's like, oh, like this is why the lasso exists, and like here's this connection to like the lie detector test, and like but also has this whole bondagey sort of thing involved with it. But I mean, it's cool. Like it's really, really interesting. I think that's for me.
I feel like it might have been like the Justice League cartoon. Might have been like my first real exposure to Wonder Woman.
She's great
because I didn't have Wonder Woman comics growing up, and I I actually never saw like the Linda Carter one, like even in reruns as a kid or anything like that until I was like an adult.
Yeah.
So it must have been that cartoon first. And then I think it's probably like the Rucka runs of Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Are probably those are probably my first experiences of that character. And then I've liked a lot of stuff since then. Like I actually really like the way Steve Orlando writes Wonder Woman. I'm a big fan of his sort of little arcs where he's sort of hopped in and out on that title.
Past and future guest, hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, I think it might have been the cartoon. It might have just been something kind of neat about her. She was the cartoon treated her slightly fish out of water because she was from Themyscira, but it was also that she was like, like she meets the Justice League. She's like, I found fellow warriors. And they go like, we don't really see ourselves that way. And like, I think they bring something to her that sort of tempers the warrior aspect. And she brings something to them, which is this like idea of this sort of grander idea of what justice and truth and stuff like that are, which is kind of special and interesting, right? She's the person that like Batman doesn't have a contingency plan for.
Yeah.
Like there's comics where he lays out like, there's my box with the kryptonite in it. There's my box with a yellow lantern ring. There's my box with this will dehydrate Aquaman or whatever he's got for him. And then the box for Wonder Woman is always just empty. He's like, I don't have anything. She's like, we just have to trust her, basically.
Probably the only one that you can trust.
Yeah.
This is true. Yeah, she like is always kind of got the right mindset and everything. But I think it's interesting because for her, I almost feel like it, for a while anyway, it was a little lonely being like the token woman. You know, it was like, and for I think a lot of young adolescent guys growing up, like she's like the one girl, you know, it's kind of like Cheetara in the Thundercats. Like you get the one like female lion Thundercat, and so it's like just you're always just kind of like the sole one. But it's been really refreshing to see now, especially with the rise of a lot more female writers, like having some of these characters back, or Batwoman, like written in the same powerful way.
Yes,
you know, whereas before it was kind of Wonder Woman was like the one that we had, that was it, you know, and now it's nice that she has kind of, you know, friends amongst her peers, so to speak. But
it's true.
I mean, kind of like, I mean, how could you not like her, right? Because then it'd be like she's the only one representing women. So.
Thankfully, she's also a decent representation, and like
she's not bad to look at too, you know. We're not gonna lie, we're not gonna sugarcoat that.
I think there is something to be said about a super strong woman who's also a brunette that maybe connects the Doctor and myself to the
I think our wives reflect that.
Yeah,
a little
absolutely.
Bit. Yeah. We've got Wonder Woman.
We have women that can kick our ass.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Absolutely. So this is our first time like fully trying to do a Wonder Woman episode. So we got a ton of questions.
We've never just only taken questions about Wonder Woman.
Yeah. So let's jump into some of these questions because I'd love to sort of chat about some of this stuff.
Sure.
All right. Well, first, we're going to Facebook.
Go to the face in the book. Go to the Facebook.
The first question comes from We've Only Just Danda. Who asks, can you explain what happened in the War of the Gods arc? The only part I remember was Circe reverting Diana back to clay.
So the short version is Circe, like of Greek mythology, Circe, who is a Wonder Woman villain.
Yeah.
Wants to kill like Gaia, like
this actually sounds like
the Earth goddess.
It's like a decent Wonder Woman villain. It's not racist. It really,
I mean,
I didn't know they existed.
So she wants to kill. She wants to kill Gaia, I think, and part of her plot is basically to pit all of the different pantheons of gods against each other. So this war breaks out between like the Roman gods and the Greek gods, and the Norse gods and the Egyptian gods, and the African gods, and all sorts of different pantheons, basically. Partway through, Diana actually is killed because she's turned back into clay, which was her original origin, right? She's clay given life.
Yeah.
I can't remember precisely how it ends, but Diana does come back like within that story. Like within it's a 4-issue story. She dies and is brought back to life, and they defeat Circe. And I mean, I think that's the short version of it. I guess my question.
I divert to you because I honestly have no idea. But I do know, I did read Cersei by Madeline Miller. So like there's like this connection of like thinking about her as a character is pretty cool.
What do you think about the idea of Diana's origin, that like being clay given life? Do you like that origin?
I've had a Chris Evans like clay model I've kept in my backyard for weeks, and I'm still waiting.
It hasn't happened yet.
Oh, not yet.
You got to pray to Zeus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. I pray to everything.
Oh, it's so weird. I think it's because that's the first version I've gotten in my head that it feels right. Right. So maybe it's just because, well, like that's how I've always known it to be. And so when they did the reboot, I was like, what? And I do have a thing against the gods, right? Like they're gods. Yeah. So none of them are actually really good people because they're not people, they're gods. And Greg Rucka and I had an extensive conversation on this. And so I prefer her not having such a direct line from Zeus.
Right.
So that's just me.
Well, I mean, especially the Greek gods, because those gods are so fickle and petty, and
they're meddling and very, very petty. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the New 52 version was more that she was literally a daughter of Zeus and Hippolyta.
Yeah.
Which is quite a bit different. I think there have been some versions, either just in animation or maybe in short runs too, where they possibly imply that Ares is her father. There have been some different versions over time, but I think the clay one is always like, it's also like a really sort of iconic image, right? You sculpt something
exactly, like,
and then lightning strikes, and then it comes to life. Like there's something kind of.
It's a little bit magical.
Yeah. I think if I made
why
like
not?
I would be like begging for death if it came to life. It's just like one eye, like over here.
Well, I mean, it's a good thing Hippolyta was a good sculptor, right? Like she did
a great job, actually. Yeah,
she got all the proportions right. There's not like one really long arm, or
she didn't come out like Diana. Would have been not great.
Yeah.
I don't think the longevity of Wonder Woman would have been this long.
No, probably not. Yeah,
not done a good job sculpting.
One large arm, one tiny one.
That's true. Sort of on this note, is kind of the next question that we got. So it might just be a good way to continue this sort of conversation about the gods and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. The next question comes from Adam Upper. Who asks, were all the Amazons formed out of clay in that version of her origin? If not, why was she brought into existence that way instead of how the rest of the Amazons came to be?
Right. So Wonder Woman is the only one.
Right.
Although Donna Troy may also have been, depending on the version you're reading.
Is there some like version, is there like some like scene we haven't seen yet with like Zeus like behind someone like sculpting her, and
it's like Ghost?
Yeah.
The Amazons were made though, but I don't think it was out of clay.
No, I thought it was more like Greek mythology where they were moved to that island because they're Amazonians, right? But I don't know what they're.
I think they were. The Amazons were like as culture like created to try to like temper men, basically, because the whole thing is like, wow, men can't control themselves. It's like something stupid like that, right? So I think they were made that way, and then they sort of self-isolate on this magical island after their attempts to temper men are met with horrific violence and awful things, which is why they reject man's world. Kind of on this note, though, there's some comics, especially more modern comics, that maybe deal with the idea of like, have the Amazons lost their way by not continuing to engage with man's world? So it's the question of, did they do the right thing because they were only met with violence to seclude themselves, or they're so much better than us, we could be better if they just stuck around and were patient with us, which seems like a real like men begging for forgiveness sort of story.
It also just sounds like you could say that about women in general.
Well,
so.
Yeah. but what are your thoughts on that? On the Amazons as a culture, have they given up? Did they do the right thing? Is sending one Wonder Woman out into the world enough?
Yeah, I mean, and there was the hesitance to that, right? So that was really more Wonder Woman's choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not like them going, okay, you know, at the end of the day, they weren't going to stop her, but like it was still like her kind of doing that breakout. So I do feel that, I guess maybe my hope, because I hope that the Amazonians are on the right track here, that they are just kind of constantly in that waiting period of the outside world being ready to accept all of the goodness that they have to offer. And so I don't know if they would not stand up to evil had it been presented. Like when Wonder Woman does go back and there's other issues where, you know, there's a little bit more integration and everything. But I do feel like I would like to see kind of them unleashed into this world right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you mean.
Sort of like Killmonger argument, like in Black Panther, which is like, yeah, you guys are great by yourselves, but like, what are you doing for women out there?
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
You just cut men out of it entirely. It's like, what are you doing for the women that have to live out in man's world?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's an interesting story potential or an interesting argument in there, which is like, are the Amazons doing good?
Right. Because they have all these principles. They're fighting. I mean, they're ready for battle, but if the battle's never there, so it's like, why are you always preparing? There has to be something in the back of your mind, because one doesn't just train with no focus or no goal, right? So my thought would be like, they do know that they will be called on one day, or they are prepared for that day. Like I would hope that that's kind of where it's directed at, because otherwise you're just training maybe just to defend themselves. But I would think that because of the culture of it and the nature of how they even raised Wonder Woman, right? Like she has those principles. So where did she learn them from? You know, she's not just, I mean, she is special, obviously. But so my hope would be that they're planning.
Is this Mimi Chan admitting that she's going to battle soon? You don't train for no reason.
I'm always ready for battle.
Yeah. They'll play.
Remember, I'm in Florida. Yeah. I remind you.
She's going after Florida, man. Finally.
Do you have a preference of the version of Amazons? Because sort of most modern depictions, they sort of are stuck as like the sword and sandals kind of ancient Greeks. But the early Golden Age ones, they had instead of it being all about magic, they had like technology, like kind of Wonder Woman's invisible jet was called a robot.
Yeah, that's where and she made it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are the ones that developed the science. They weren't just these, making fire out of the out of the sticks. They were like scientists as well, my understanding.
Do you have a preference between those two kind of versions?
Yeah, I like the feeling of that they understand technology, because the thing I didn't like about the film, the one that came out, the one thing I did like, of course, is the no man's land scene. Like there it is, there she was. That if they just had that and we're good, like as a music video or something. The thing I didn't like was making her seem so gullible and naive and unknowing when it came to a lot of things. And I understand why it was done, but that beside the point. For them to survive alone in this special island, like they would need to be able to invent and do things. So I do prefer kind of them having that kind of that intelligence. Yeah,
totally. It feels like they're not just stagnating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why don't we jump into the next question?
Let's do it.
Next question comes from our old friend Chicken Maddie. It's Matthew Poulter, who asks, what are your favorite depictions of Wonder Woman from comics or otherwise?
So I because we already talked about it a lot, I'm gonna put the Greg Rucka ban on the other than Greg Rucka. Are there versions of Wonder Woman that really stand out that you connect with, that you really like?
I mean, me personally, well, art-wise, I do really like Liam Sharp and Nicola Scott. Of course, that goes hand in hand. But, and of course, like I said, for me, when that word Wonder Woman comes up, I still, like, Linda Carter is still just in my head, not Gal Gadot, right? So she's really in my head. And I want to say there was even an off Grant Morrison run or something, like an arc or something that might have been
Wonder Woman Earth 1.
Earth 1. Yeah, so I enjoyed that as well. So, but I think I probably answered the question already.
I mean, art wise, I did really like the sort of simplicity of like it's Cliff Chang that worked on
Cliff Chang. Oh yeah, with Azzarello. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's something I kind of liked the silver instead of the gold too. I know that like this is like a controversial opinion, like people's opinions about Superman's trunks, but I kind of liked her New 52 look, and really like Cliff Chang's artwork, and I thought it worked really well, especially because that whole story was like so about the mythology. It was like about Olympus.
True.
Her going to Hephaestus to ask for something and stuff like that, and it felt like it was
Hephaestus for the rest of us,
because it was almost like flat colors, and that it almost felt like it could have been that like vase artwork. Like it almost felt like it could have been part of like the Greek tradition of those stories a little bit. I like that artwork. I like that cartoon Wonder Woman, obviously from the Justice League cartoon.
Oh yeah.
I do like Gal Gadot.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not? I mean,
how could you not? Of course.
I think there are some moments from different films that I don't necessarily think ring super true, but her in her movie, I love 100%. And I like that idea of like she's trained to be a warrior, but she's also like she has this sort of inherent compassion in that movie just deals with like which path do you take, right? Do you give in to the rage? Do you become like men? Do you become like war? Or do you like answer with, peace and love? And I think she did a pretty good job of that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I completely agree with you. All right, why don't we go on to the next question? So we're going to leave Facebook and head on over to Twitter.
Twitter.
This is an early recording for us, and I didn't set my alarm this morning, but it's okay because the scream of a donkey woke me up. That's right. The next question comes from Braydon.
Such a long journey.
Who asks, what is the origin story of Wonder Woman's invisible jet?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it. So that original,
I thought she made it, right? Or
the original one.
They invented it.
Yeah, I think back in the 40s, they just called it a robot plane, even though it is clearly invisible, and that is like the thing you should be highlighting about it. They don't call it an invisible plane; they say it's a robot plane. They call it like her invisible robot plane.
But maybe the question is then, like, what's the origins of their like knowledge of technology and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best versions of it now are like a mix of like science and magic. Like they have a technology called the purple ray, which is like a healing device, which looks like it design wise looks very Star Trek-y. You lie on this bed and a ray shoots at you and then you're healed. But I think it's powered by magic, or like something like that. So I would hope that Wonder Woman's invisible jet, that the invisibility component of it is like, this is something that, like Hephaestus has been working on, God of the Forge has made this invisible. Like some connection between science and magic, I think is what
What is magic but science we haven't understood yet?
I mean, you can make that argument.
Just science, baby.
Right. So we came all the way around to Wonder Woman is only science.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Do you prefer Amazonian invisible jet, or that Wonder Woman like comes to Man's World and either steals or commandeers a piece of Man's World technology to use for her own devices?
I'm gonna go with the traditional Amazonian, although that one is kind of fun. Like that could be like this random comedic short film where she's like stealing the technology
and just sticking it to the man. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't trust you with the stealth technology this like good, but I will use this as I deem fit.
I know what to do. Yeah.
I also like the idea of her like walking inside this jet and just being like, oh, I know all the things to make this work. Like, it's like 300 switches. That's really funny. All right, let's go to the next.
I mean, that's the question. How does she know where all the switches are? Have you seen the cockpit of a plane?
I know. It's pretty intense. All right, let's go to the next question.
Okay.
Next question comes from our favorite religious representative. It's Chris Chan. Who asks, can you summarize the period of Wonder Woman's story during the 60s to the 80s, right up to Crisis? I think she's lost her powers and became a government agent.
You've probably seen these comics where she's got the sort of like mod kind of look, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think the idea was that the Amazons were leaving for another dimension, and she chooses not to go with them, but that choice costs her powers. So she becomes just like a super spy. She trains with like a martial artist and learns like kung fu or something similar, and then she basically works like. Apparently, she was modeled on like Diana Rigg in like the Avengers, like the British,
really?
like the British Avengers. But it's just basically
this. What years was this? 60s?
Late 60s through to just about Crisis.
Okay, so that makes sense. So they basically strip her powers, and she's kind of a secondary character and not as important. And yeah, that makes sense. I'm not going to bet on who wrote. Not going to bet on who wrote that, but I'm going to bet there was a lot of male influence writers in that.
Were you sure a man wrote that? Yeah.
Yeah, this is the weird thing with Wonder Woman. She's been around for like 80 some odd years, but it's like. A big chunk of those is like completely ignore them because no one cared about her.
Well, they made her basically just like she was like a housewife at one point. Like they really tried to just like strip her of all of like her like powers and like history.
There seems to have been a lot of contempt for the single only empowering female character.
I think you could just say women.
Well, yes. Yeah, I mean. The thing about summarizing this period is the summation is that they took a superpowered, basically one of the only superpowered female characters of any substance, and they removed the substance for like 20 years.
Right.
That's pretty much the only thing to sum up there, I think.
Is there any interaction with like the Vietnam War or anything like that? Like,
I'm sure there's references and stuff like that. Like, I can't imagine they didn't do it, especially because Steve Trevor is always like military adjacent. But really, like, it's because they stripped her powers. It's not like she shows up in Vietnam and like cling.
Yeah,
like,
but then they also make her very like lovesick and very kind of wishy-washy that way, and just I think.
Yeah, it's pretty disappointing. The covers are cool because it's very very few comics really embrace that sort of like mod style. So like art wise, if you want a bunch of things with cool looking mod 60s covers, pick up those Wonder Woman issues. Yeah, but I don't read them.
Maybe we'll get a
keep them in the little them in their little plastic.
Exactly. Yeah.
They go immediately in the bag or like behind a frame.
Yes, frame it and that's it.
Exactly. Maybe if we get like a Wonder Woman movie, like a third one, we'll go back to the 60s and just take it back
and undo all of the good work of the first.
That would be I'd be okay with that because then you're undoing all of those shitty comics. So I'm totally okay with that.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the next question.
Yeah.
Do you want to leave Twitter and head on over to Instagram?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we're going to
Instagram. Take some questions and answer them.
Yeah. First
I forgot that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on. Just fully. I know you're nervous around somebody who actually like could kick your ass, but.
Well, yeah. All the way from
pretty
Florida.
far away. Yeah. Pretty far away, guys. And with the distancing, you're safe.
I don't know what a master can do.
It's true. I can throw things.
See,
that's awesome.
Terrifying. First question comes from the real Josh Gill.
Yeah, Gill.
Oh, sexy Gill. Who asks, Hippolyta and Artemis have assumed the mantle of Wonder Woman at times, and some heroes, Batman and Superman, for sure have a mantle that deserves to be passed on as part of a legacy or symbol. I've always felt that the title of Wonder Woman should always stay with Diana. There's just something special about it and about her. What are everybody's thoughts about that? Right. Is this something that like anybody could be the Wonder Woman if you lived up to it? Or
do you, even though it has objectively happened,
you can pick up the last?
Yeah,
level?
I was like, didn't they have an issue where they had her pass it on to? Yeah,
it's happened to different people for a bit. Her mother Hippolyta was meant to be like the golden
it's not
age.
Hippolyta?
No, it's not Hippolyta.
Okay, that makes more sense.
She's meant to have been like the golden age Wonder Woman. Artemis for a bit in the 90s was Wonder Woman. Donna Troy for a bit was Wonder Woman. They've a bunch of people have done it for a stint of time. But do we feel that way about that mantle the same way that we do, like, there should always be a Batman? Should there always be a Wonder Woman, or should those people just be their own things?
It's an interesting question. Yeah. I mean, it's hard because I really like the Diana as Diana. You know, she's so iconic, you know, and it's hard to imagine another character being able to kind of be that persona. I don't know if I say that because of my connection with her, of like being that first heroine that I'm with, because like I loved Mighty Thor, you know, I loved kind of having those like alternate things, and I'm very open to mixing and matching. But I don't know, there's something about Wonder Woman I kind of like as is. Like I like her as is. So I guess that's the traditional side of me, I guess.
I think I kind of agree. I kind of feel that way about Superman too, to be honest.
That, like, for sure. Yeah, like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Superman thing is just so Clark and I think Wonder Woman is just so Diana that people could be their proteges, could live up to their example, but I feel like those mantles belong to them in a way that Batman doesn't. Like, we saw Dick Grayson as Batman and it worked.
Yeah, but the difference there is that, and this is totally Greg Rucka, not me, but it's Clark Kent is Superman. Superman is Clark Kent. Yeah. Like whereas when Bruce Wayne is being Bruce Wayne, he's completely playing another character. It's not, he's not Batman. Batman is Batman, right? And so the same way, Diana is still Wonder Woman. She doesn't suddenly become this alternate character, because Diana is still ambassador of truth and justice, and she's doing good deeds. She's a philanthropist. You know, she's still the same person. Yeah. And so I think Superman and her have kind of that thing in common, where even in their non-superhero self, they are still themselves. They're still true to themselves. So therefore they are that character.
Yeah. And I mean, I think modern comics have done a lot of work to basically take all of those ex-proteges and people from other continuities and drive them to where they would never want to become Wonder Woman. Like Artemis now in the comics, she's part of the Bana Migdal, which is like a splinter sect of the Amazons that worship Egyptian gods. And she does her own thing. She's hanging out with Red Hood and Bizarro and stuff like that. Donna Troy, now they've got this sort of fraught relationship. You know, like sometimes they team up, sometimes you don't trust me. That kind of the drama thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think Donna Troy has sort of carved out her own thing. And Donna Troy is just a cool name. I mean, it's like, you could just keep that.
Yeah. Don't lose it. Yeah.
I think they've done I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but I feel like they've put all those characters on paths where they wouldn't become Wonder Woman.
Right.
The only exception might be Cassie Sandsmark, the second Wonder Girl.
Wonder Girl, right.
She could, maybe. And I think maybe in Deceased she does.
I think that, playing like sort of devil's advocate here, I think there's an opportunity because I think so much of what it makes Wonder Woman special, besides a few sort of things, is very linked to Themyscira,
right?
And I wonder if there's an opportunity for because at some point you could pass it down to either someone from Themyscira or an opportunity for someone to like sort of a Miles Morales type situation, or someone brought from the real world to Themyscira to have to sort of take that over.
You could bring in Nubia.
Well, and the thing is, for me, there's an opportunity to I think a big standing issue with Wonder Woman is that though it's great to have a female representation, there's not a lot of diversity still there. To have sort of like cultural diversity, have someone from like a different race potentially, or something like that, I think would be really cool.
Well, I mean, Nubia might be the ideal one. That's she's basically Black Wonder Woman. That would be like maybe a worthy successor.
Yeah, I think something like that could be a really cool thing, even if it's just like the way that they still sort of do a Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and a Miles Morales thing, having a sort of another version or like an alternate universe, something like that. I think it would be really cool to have sort of like what happens if you sort of take somebody like Nubia or bring somebody from the real world and sort of half raise them in Themyscira, and you know what I mean? Like, I think there's an opportunity there. I would love to see what that could be. It doesn't take away from the originals.
Yeah.
But I think that, I would be curious to see like sort of a fish out of water in a fish out of water story.
Right.
So if you're taking somebody from the real world and then putting them in them obscure, what does that reverse look like?
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I would love to see something like that for sure.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, right at this point, like I think because it's not that Krypton is all of the things that stand for that become Superman. That's really more of the Kents than it is of Krypton. But Themyscira is so tied into like justice and things like that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see.
That's a fair point.
Why don't we go to the next question?
Sure, let's do it.
Next question comes from Alex Sanchez, who asks, can you talk about her rogues? I know about Ares and Cheetah, but I'm not familiar with much outside of those two. That's because we steer clear of a lot of those.
I mean, Wonder Woman doesn't have as well-known or as deep a roster of rogues as other heroes.
Obviously, the paper.
Yeah.
Man,
yeah, we were looking at some of the ones from that sort of like forgotten era, and one was Paper Man. He was paper.
he was given the abilities through an experimental paper explosion or something.
My!
Are there Wonder Woman rogues outside of Ares and Cheetah that you enjoy, Mimi?
Again, it's been I'm not like consistently reading right now, but it's always like you said. There's no like arch nemesis type of thing where she doesn't have the Joker. She doesn't have Lex Luthor. I guess Cheetah's the closest to that in terms of having that main one. I like when it goes into the mythology, so I liked the take on understanding Circe and Medusa and things like that. So that's always fun because I really enjoy learning about Greek mythology. And while they're just kind of sprinkling or, kind of creatively going around what it is, it always sparks me to maybe read something else on some of those characters and things like that. So I enjoy when she is like the Azarella version, like where there's just a lot of mythology happening and then I get to learn more about other characters. So I enjoy when she's up against some like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a couple of other, I guess, relatively big ones would be there's Dr. Psycho, who I think is an excellent Wonder Woman villain.
He's a sane guy though, right?
He's totally normal. There's nothing weird about him.
I would love for that to be my GP. Paging Dr. Psycho.
So Dr. Psycho is this like diminutive man who basically he's a misogynist. He hates women, and he's got like mind control and like illusion kind of casting powers. So he messes with minds and like he feels spurned by. He's basically an incel, right? Like he basically like feels spurned by women. I hate all women. Wonder Woman is the epitome of everything that he hates. He's in some ways, I think he's never been written to his potential because he could be her Joker because he's so like antithetical to everything that she stands for, right? Yeah. He is not about compassion or empathy. He's selfish and shallow and like angry and all of these sort of things. He has the potential, I think, to be a bigger villain than he is.
For sure.
And then there's Giganta, is another kind of big Wonder Woman one. So her name is Dr. Doris Zuul, who many versions of her origin, it's about she gets her like mind transplanted like into an ape, and then the ape body gets evolved back into a person. There's a lot of like weird, crazy stuff with her. I think
is no ape.
There's no magic there either. It's just science. But
the current version might have been slightly the opposite, where it's like an ape gains sentience and then mind gets transferred into a woman who already had size altering powers.
Yeah, it's not Alec. It's just plants that think they're Alec.
Yeah. There's some wacky stuff with Giganta, but I mean, essentially, a woman who can grow very large, who is a scientist and things like that. Sort of like, I don't know. It feels like it fits with like the mythology thing because like a character just being really big, like
God of War,
like the Cyclops or like some sort of Leviathan kind of creatures. I could sort of see that, but I think. Other than those, you're really talking about a lower tier of villain. The movie brought in Dr. Poison, but like Dr. Poison is not like a main Wonder Woman character. Silver Swan has shown up a bit. Dr. Cyber.
Is that where he just drops into people's DMs?
Yeah.
ASL. Oh no, it's Dr. Cyber.
Yeah. I don't. She definitely doesn't have like the catalog that Superman does. What do we think? What do we think of other characters we could think of that might make good Wonder Woman adversaries, as opposed to the hero that they currently fight? Do we have any ideas for that?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm sorry. I'm like totally sidetracked because when you're describing Dr. Psycho, all I could see was you describing like our current president of the United States. And I was like, it's too real for me. It's too real.
Well, I mean, it's both the exact right time and a little too much to make a Dr. Psycho
it's too much.
Right
it's too much.
Or, the perfect time. Unfortunately, the only difference is that he could never become a doctor.
yeah.
Right. Well, self-proclaimed doctor, obviously.
I guess that's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, now considering that like demonology is part of being a doctor, I think maybe
right.
No.
Sorry, I knew this is going to take us down the path, but I was like, I'm so distracted when you kept talking. I'm like, oh my god, won't leave me alone.
Dr. Psycho only eats fast food.
But that's a really great question. I wish I had.
I would love to see like another strong like female as the villain, like somebody like Poison Ivy or something like that.
Right, sure.
Like sort of, I think like it's an easy go-to to bring in another man to like fight against the woman.
Right.
But I like the idea of just like it being about female empowerment and like both sides technically could have like a reason for what they're doing. I think those are the most interesting is when, because it's easy to bring in someone like Dr. Psycho, but it's like, it's easy to go that's black and white. But what I love is when there's sort of this like gray area where somebody who like with Black Panther, somebody who challenges sort of like what, because I think the problem with Superman and Wonder Woman is that it's so easy to go, well, they're pure good. It's easy to understand. But like with Black Panther, it's like, but what are you doing for everyone else? And I think like someone who can challenge them from that standpoint, like Poison Ivy, who's just going like, Themyscira is great, but like they're destroying the world.
I mean, here. Ivy kind of fits into the Cheetah mold pretty nicely, where there's sympathetic characters that are sort of made to be villains. Like they didn't even want to be villains. The world kind of makes them that way. Yeah, I think that would work. Yeah, Ivy's a good one. Mimi?
Yeah, I like where, no, I can't think of actual name of one, but I love where you're going with that because there's so many characters that could be female that have had something wrong done to them. And therefore they have reason behind their hate and their anger. And it's like a very misunderstood. There could be a lot of complexity, like a much more creative and perhaps a writer that I could ask about that. I'll trickle that down to my podcast and ask Greg. But I think that would definitely be interesting. I can't honestly think it off the top of my head, but I like where Richard was going with that.
You know how Superman is sometimes like the de facto representative of Earth in space? Yeah. Just because he can go to space, he goes to other planets, and he's sort of like, he kind of already represents the best of us. I think it would be neat to see Diana do that in like the spiritual realms. Like they did have her kind of take over the Justice League Dark, which is like the magic Justice League. And so she's already kind of moving that way. But for Wonder Woman to be like, we found this new magical realm, like Wonder Woman should be the one to find it, be the one that's like our kind of de facto ambassador to spiritual worlds or magical worlds or things like that. That's sort of because a lot of the other magic characters are of like dubious morality. Wonder Woman is not, and she's tied to the world of magic. So I think it'd be cool to see her in those stories. And so I think villains of that kind of like magical otherworldly nature would also fit well with her.
I like that thing, too. And there's nobody who's really taken over sort of the magic realm in like the main sort of Justice League, too. So it would be fun to have a character that can really do that.
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
All right. Do we want to end questions now?
Yeah. Let's move on.
Yeah. So we're finished the question portion of it, and now we have one more section, which is our favorite game.
It's a very fun game.
Every week we play a game called "Can You Guess the Name of the Character?" based on how someone who doesn't read comic books describes that character to us. Just rolls off the tongue.
We're not good at titles.
So we ended up with Dr. DC. Yeah. The medical podcast.
That's a great title.
Thank you.
I'm just glad I didn't call myself Black Belt DC.
There's a lot of problems with that, especially with DC if you call yourself something that's black. All right. So if you haven't played this game before, if you don't know that, the basic idea is that I send a photo of a DC character to my wife who doesn't read comic books, doesn't care about them, and she sends me clues for how she would describe this character.
Right.
And we have to try to guess.
I have not seen it before. So Mimi, this is for you and I to play here.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, clue number 1.
Okay.
This is my wife talking, not me.
Right.
Though I probably agree. If I could marry or get sexy with one DC character, it would be this one.
Oh, okay. Pretty vague still.
Yeah, that's.
Do you want to guess? Or do you want another clue?
You can guess as many times as you want.
So, well, I mean, God, they're so the obvious ones are, like Superman, Batman, but like this is you said, or your wife? No, this is your wife's.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of agree, but yes,
right.
This is technically my wife's opinion.
There is Wonder Woman, of course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, but it definitely could be.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's
go to number 2.
Next clue.
Next clue. They could easily solve the mystery to my heart and detect my emotions.
Okay. Right. So, detective.
Yeah.
That narrows it down. I'm not gonna say Batman though. I'm gonna say Martian Manhunter.
It is Martian Manhunter.
Wow.
Boom.
Man, you've played this game before.
Do you know what? There are episodes where we play this game and I can just imagine the people listening screaming at me because I'm not getting it.
Oh my gosh. So wait, so when she describes the character, is it because she's just sees a picture of it?
Yeah, I just sent her a photo of it.
Okay.
And she sends me what she thinks about it, of a character she doesn't know anything about.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I'll give you the other 2 clues just for fun.
Yeah,
so
number
number 3 is isn't a dumb human or from this planet.
Oh.
And number 4 was although they could take any shape, I wouldn't mind getting close to their green skin.
My goodness.
She's got strong feelings about Martian Manhunter.
This was a very thirsty version.
Wow.
Of the game, yeah.
My wife's been in a mood, apparently.
I
think she's the Martian Manhunter.
That's hilarious.
I like her clues. Tell her she did a great job.
I will. She'll really much appreciate that. Mimi, thank you so much for coming on this show.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It was a lot of fun.
Do you want to take a little bit of time to plug your own show? Yes. Tell people where they can find you online.
Sure. Well, I am Culture Chat Podcast, and I am at Sifu Mimi Chan, SIFUMIMI, and basically I cover all sorts of things. So we do a lot of comics. I have a weekly podcast with Greg Rucka, but I also do other topics such as immigration, LGBTQ. I like to cover a lot of things that are current. I've been doing a lot of Black Lives Matter episodes. And talking to a lot of former and current law enforcement and asking them lots of questions. So yeah, I do a lot of current events and things that I'm really passionate about. I had a wonderful DACA student on this year, which was, such an important year for her. So yeah, I like to cover all sorts of different things, but I do have a lot of amazing comic creators on the show. Everybody from, Greg Rucka, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Matt Fraction, Stan Sakai, Mike Mignola. They've all been on, and I'll be talking to Stan this week actually, because, he just won those 3 Eisners, so super excited for him. But I've had a slew of amazing comic creator guests on the show. So for those of you listening, I know you love DC. A lot of the writers are often guests on my show. So please listen, and thank you guys so much for hosting and having me on. This was a lot of fun, and it's always nice to be invited.
Yeah, no, we had a great time. This was terrific. Yeah.
Who knew you could have a geek podcast and also do good social justice things too? I didn't realize that. I feel like ours is doing the antithesis of that, but yeah.
That's not true. I've seen you guys cover some good stuff. So.
Yeah, we try. It's in spite of myself.
Yeah, in between thirsting over Justice League members. Well,
Jason Momoa. All right, Mimi Chan, thank you so much again, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thanks so much.
And of course, we would love to hear what you residents think about all of the stuff that we talked about. What's your ideas about Wonder Woman? Who do you think could potentially be a good villain? That's a great one. But also, how did you guess Martian Manhunter that quickly? I don't know. I'd be very interested to hear.
Yeah. Your wife is the Martian Manhunter. I enjoy that a lot. I'm sorry.
Also, you could send us in questions for next week's episode.
Yes.
Which we know, right?
Yes. Next week's episode is the villain team ups one.
Oh, yeah.
So could be talking about Secret Society, Legion of Doom, Fatal Five, any superhero team or partnership, or just one-off kind of team up. Send those in. That's what we're talking about.
Awesome. You can do so through our various social media platforms, such as our Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast,
Twitter,
at Dr. DC.
Oh, shit. Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast.
Email,
drdcpodcast@gmail.com.
Of course, jump on that subreddit.
r/Dr_DC.
And of course, the doc phone is always open.
208-917-3238.
208-917-DCEU if you're nasty.
Nasty.
Oh, because you're nasty. The second Mimi Chan leaves, the show with this truly becomes what it is.
It's not as stark a contrast as our episode with
oh my god,
Dr. Travis Langley.
We're like, oh, thank you, sir, and we're just like, come, like after he leaves. We're such like little kids with like real adults in the room. We're like, okay, yeah, thank you.
We finally been invited to the big kids table.
Yeah, the second we leave, we're just doing fart jokes again. And of course, you can go to our website,
drdcpodcast.com or .ca.
And we're always taking those 5-star reviews on iTunes or any other platforms. Just make sure that you send them to us because we don't get notifications for all of them.
That's right.
Get to 100 reviews. We're going to do a standalone Lord of the Rings a mini sort of podcast. So you're going to want to check it on that.
Yeah.
And more important.
And at an undetermined number of reviews, so keep sending them in. We're going to unleash our brand new ongoing podcast.
That's right.
It'll be a supernatural rewatch podcast.
Holy shit. And if that's not enough content, make sure that you go to our Patreon.
Patreon.com/DrDC. There's a $5 level and a $7 level. There's a full bonus episode every week. It's the double dose. There's also a video episode every week talking about something that I'm currently reading.
Yeah.
There are you can vote on what episode themes we do.
Mm-hmm.
There's merch discount. There's all sorts of fun stuff up there, and that Patreon subscription does help us keep making cool stuff for you.
And you want that? You want more content from us?
Yeah. How much content do you want?
How much can you take? Jesus Christ! The second somebody leaves, we're just children.
We really are.
All right, that's it for this week.
Adios.
Ciao, ciao.
They always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure. They are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.